All right, today we're going to unravel a really fascinating business puzzle. And to do it, we're going to use this powerful tool called the golden thread of strategy. So let me ask you this. Why would a company that's absolutely crushing it decide to buy a rival that's, well, struggling? I mean, a rising star from an emerging market, dropping billions on an old legacy brand from Europe. It just feels wrong, right? Like a huge, totally unnecessary risk. But what if it's not a risk at all? What if it's actually a stroke of genius? Okay, let's get specific. Think about a huge global move, like an ambitious Chinese company, say Geely, buying a classic but struggling European brand like Volvo. Yeah, that's the exact kind of puzzle we're here to solve today. So how on earth do we make sense of a move like that? Well, this is where our cool framework comes in. It's called the golden thread. And what it does is pretty amazing. It helps us go beyond just saying what happened and really get to the heart of why it happened. It's all about connecting the dots, one by one, in this super clear, logical line. So what exactly is this golden thread? Simple. It's a method for connecting three different layers of analysis. You start big with what we call the arena, then you zoom right in to find a specific problem or a void, and then, the final piece, you see how a company's strategy is the perfect solution to that problem. It's all about that step-by-step connection. And the process is just so simple, but it's really powerful. First, we're going to look at the whole landscape, the big macro picture. Then, step 2, we're going to pinpoint what's missing, what's broken. And third, we'll see exactly how the company's strategy was built to fix that problem. See? Super straightforward. Okay, let's dive in and put it to work. All right, it's time to actually start weaving this golden thread. We're going to apply this 3-layer framework to our case study. Okay, first up, layer 1, the arena. Think of this as the 30,000-foot view. We're looking at the entire global car market. And right away, things get really interesting, because this view reveals a major tension. If we use a tool called the cage framework, which basically helps you spot barriers in global business, we see two forces pulling in opposite directions. On the one hand, you've got this huge economic advantage, right? It's way cheaper to build cars in China. But on the other hand, there's this massive administrative disadvantage. A new Chinese brand has what's called liability of origin. Basically, it means there's a huge brand barrier. It's almost impossible to just show up and start selling your cars in Europe from scratch. And that big picture landscape, it points us directly to our second layer, the problem. The fact that you can't just export your cars and win. Well, that tells us something is missing. There's a gap, a void, that the company has to figure out how to fill. Now, this isn't just any old problem. It's something specific, known as an institutional void. And this is such a great concept. It's all about a lack of soft infrastructure. And what does that mean? It means the stuff you just can't build or buy no matter how much money you have. We're talking about things like 100 years of brand heritage, or a deep bench of R&D talent, or just that global trust that takes decades to build. And this just perfectly illustrates the specific void our Chinese company is facing. Look, their home market has incredible strengths. They've got amazing manufacturing skills, they have tons of capital, but, and this is the big but, it has these critical voids. You can't go to a store and buy global brand equity. You can't just snap your fingers and create an R&D heritage that's been around for generations. The local market just doesn't have these essential, intangible things for sale. Okay, so that brings us to the final layer. We know the landscape. We've identified this very specific void. So the big question is, how does the company get around it? And that, my friends, brings us to layer 3, the solution. So it all comes down to a choice of strategy. They could take the traditional route, right? The slow and steady path. Sometimes it's called the upsell model. You start exporting a little bit, you spend decades building up your brand. It takes forever. Or they could do something totally radical. They could use what's called a springboard strategy. This is where you go out and acquire a company specifically to get the assets you're missing, and you get them instantly. You literally leapfrog right over those voids. And this is the aha moment. When you put all 3 of these layers together, the solution to our puzzle just snaps into focus. Just look at how perfectly this all connects. The macro view showed us a huge brand barrier. The void analysis showed us the home market can't create the brand assets you need. So, what do? The springboard strategy. Acquiring those assets directly becomes this incredibly elegant, powerful solution to just jump right over that barrier. See? It's a perfect golden thread of logic. And get this, a quote from the original analysis just nails it. It says Geely didn't just buy a car company. No, they used a high-risk acquisition to instantaneously capture the strategic assets they needed, the brand, the R&D, the trust, all so they could bypass their own home market's limits and start competing globally right away. So what started out as a really confusing puzzle, why would a winner buy a loser, now looks like a clear, even predictable strategic pattern, as long as you're looking at it through the right lens. And you know, the best part is that this is a tool that you can use now. The next time you're reading the news and you see some surprising business move, just try running it through the golden thread. First, what's the big picture, the arena? Second, what's the specific problem or void they're trying to solve? And then third, is the company's move a clever solution to fill that void? And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. Now that you know how this works, now that you know about voids and assets, where do you think the next big springboard acquisition is going to happen? Which industries? Which countries? It's something to keep an eye on. Thanks for joining me.